Yes, they're meeting down at the station.
They just don't want to respond to a call.
Right.
There he is.
And I did start the video,
All right.
so just so we're aware.
How was New York? Awesome.
Charles, birthday cake?
Oh, whose birthday is it?
Would you like a piece?
Happy birthday. Yes, please. Thank you.
That was a yes?
Yes, please. Yeah. Apologies for being late. I was navigating K10.
You're not late yet.
All right.
Yep.
You get a small piece.
Thank you, sir. As it should be.
Hello, how are you?
Small piece fast, I guess.
So I've got 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before we get into roll call, I just want to officially thank the city of DeSoto for the delicious birthday cake. It was very kind. I appreciate that. Very kind gesture. Roll call.
Manson,
Present.
Maddock,
Present.
Templin,
Present.
Lane,
Here.
Milburn,
Present.
Schultz,
Here.
Huggins,
Here.
all present.
General business, 3A, approve planning commission agenda. Anyone have any changes or corrections they'd like to propose?
Make a motion.
Or the agenda is presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 3B, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Anyone have anything to disclose this week? Seeing none, I will move on to 3C, disclosure of any outside communications regarding commission business. I'm assuming that's things on this agenda we're talking about. Ready? None. At this time, I would like to call the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentation is for informational purposes only. No action will be taken. There's a 4-minute time limit. Anyone wish to address the planning commission on items not on the agenda tonight? Seeing no one online either?
Nobody online.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll move then to item 7A, consider a site plan for Flint Commerce Park Building C.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
I will indulge in some cake after the meeting. That'll be the true celebration getting through this. So what you have before you is the site plan for Flint Commerce Center Building C. It's the first building that is going up on 103rd and Edgerton Road. As you recall, about a year or so, or a little bit more, property was rezoned to M1. And then later we did have a preliminary plat that was approved by the Planning Commission. And now with the next step in the development process is to review the site plan, which has been submitted to you. Also included in the site plan is an updated traffic study and drainage memo. Applicant Eric Gramacki is here tonight, along with representatives from BHC that completed the updated traffic study and drainage memo. So if you have any specific questions, I will let the applicant speak. Also with Kevin Lee, Polsinelli Law Firm is also here tonight. The site plan itself has a warehouse building, or building C is a little over 1 million square feet with associated parking. I did send you on Monday a updated, revised parking count. There are now 504 total parking spaces, 8 of which are standard accessible parking with 3 van accessible stalls. The proposed site plan has 251 trailer parking spaces, 50 loading docks, 4 drive doors, and with the potential of 168 additional loading dock locations. Of course, with all site plans, we do have a landscape requirement. The landscaping plan has been submitted, which does meet our requirements. Also, a photometric plan was submitted as well, which meets our requirements. As I had mentioned, stormwater management letter was submitted and reviewed. No additional stormwater detention is needed. A lot of these issues, as far as the stormwater, was looked at, and also the overall traffic impact study was part of the preliminary plat. But as we move through this process, when we have an exact building footprint and an exact area for impervious area, just needed to double check the traffic counts and also the areas dedicated for stormwater. So those have been updated for your review. As I mentioned, utility improvements include stormwater and a water line. Public water is provided by Water District 7, and there are no dedicated public roads for this site plan. They're all privately held. The stormwater itself drains into the detention ponds to the west, and then they go under K10 and ultimately discharge into the Kansas River. Typically, we include sidewalks on the site plan, but those are being constructed as part of Edgerton Road and 103rd Street, so those are not part of the applicant's requirements for approval. Moving on to the architectural standards, the architectural design meets our requirements. The highest point of the building is 48 feet, which shields all rooftop mounted equipment. The sides have varying architectural features as required by city code. They emphasize the corners. They do include natural glass and lighting. There's some recessed facades, and they have multiple and complementary colors throughout. There are renderings included in your package as well. There are also signage locations shown on the plan. Those do meet our requirements. However, the specifics of the site plan or the signage is with our building official. So when building permits are turned in, they will review those to make sure the size conforms. They're not anything that's outside of our sign regulations, but that is a detail that's part of the building permit process. As I'd mentioned, landscaping has been submitted. As you recall, during the rezoning, we had quite a bit of discussion on the amount of landscaping. The east, north, and west sides, or pardon me, south sides have significant landscaping, which meets our criteria. There is also some on the west side, but as you know, in our buffering plan, like uses, and it's also going to be internal to the site with a private road. So some of our buffering requirements, mostly for public viewing areas, or areas that are, especially that are adjacent to residential neighborhoods, as we talked about. Wanted to make sure the residents that are on Edgerton Road are not profoundly affected by this change that is going to be happening. So we did have that discussion with the rezoning. I think it was over a year ago. It was in the winter of late 2022, early 2023. Overall, easements and lot lines. We also had, pardon me, during the rezoning, we had a discussion of the setbacks. We did increase the setback for along Edgerton Road. The site plan does meet that setback distance, and easements and lot lines are all shown on the preliminary plat. At this time, I'll stand for any questions you may have, but it does meet our criteria for site plan development. Once again, if you have any questions specifically for the applicant, they are here tonight. So, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions, Brad?
Do we have a schedule for Edgerton and 103rd Street construction to be complete?
I'll let Joe, do you want to answer that? Or Mike, you can do it. You two are more
I
involved.
think Eric's probably the
Yeah,
bouncing that one around.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, first off, just Planning Commission, thank you very much for meeting with us tonight. Really appreciate you guys accommodating a special hearing, and happy birthday as well. So, yeah, happy we're on that. But from Edgerton Road construction perspective, we've substantially completed Edgerton Road as of June 2023. Where we've kind of left it is basically all asphalt paving has been completed, concrete curb work has been completed, except for a few storm structures that have been left out. That's primarily just due to a future water main relocation we're going to complete later down the road. But as of today, Edgerton Road south of 95th to 103rd Street has been substantially completed. In tandem with some of the Panasonic battery manufacturing facility coordination efforts, we have held off on striping that road because it's eventually going to turn into kind of a modified construction path for traffic associated with the Panasonic development to our south. 103rd Street, that's not necessarily directly associated with our development, but Clarkson Construction just recently started construction on that 103rd Street corridor. They are completing everything basically at Edgerton Road to the east, starting in July up until November of this year. And then at that point, they will kind of shift their, construction to the west of Edgerton Road all the way to Evening Star. I think long-term, their timeline is like Q4 of 2024.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, for
So-
the whole, that's for the whole corridor.
Yep. And all in all, basically Edgerton Road is substantially complete as of June. And then 103rd Street substantially complete by Q4 of 2024.
So is Edgerton Road open to traffic
Yes.
without striping or?
No,
Well-
it's not open to. through
Sorry, my
traffic.
bad.
It's
Yeah.
local traffic only right now.
Yeah, my bad. Local
Yeah.
traffic only.
So, a little zoomed out version then, so Edgerton, as Eric says, substantially complete. There's tie-ins at the 95th Street intersection that can't be done yet because of the water line conflict, and there's a sanitary sewer that will begin constructing probably next month. So that work needs to be complete before the tie-in at 95th can be done. And then at the south end, the roundabout there at 103rd Street, Clarkson's doing that under KDOT's direction. And that's the one that'll be scheduled for likely to begin this fall. Won't be complete till probably sometime in the spring is that. So it's not open to traffic at this time. It's local traffic only.
So Edgerton, I mean, do we have a schedule for the water line improvement and the sewer line improvement at 95th?
Yeah, so the sewer line will be constructed this fall. Likely, I can't imagine it wouldn't be done by the end of the year, but at least by springtime of next year. The water line, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so our current goal is the sewer line, basically gravity sewer main project along, directly parallel with Edgerton Road. We'll start construction on that by early August. And then the goal is actually to try to get that completed, by the end of the year. Once that's completed, what the current plan is along the 103rd Street corridor, there's a water main relocation being completed ahead of that roadway improvement project. So what the district, Clarkson, has been coordinating is 103rd Street water main will be relocated some point this summer into the early fall. And then once that's done, they will jump over and complete the water main relocation along Edgerton Road, shortly after sewer main improvements are completed. We had to wait to do the water main relocation until after the sewer main, just due to some trench depths and things of that nature that we had to accommodate for.
So why did you not do the sanitary sewer when you did Edgerton Road?
Before.
Yeah.
So we moved up the construction timeline for Edgerton Road to try and meet the Panasonic construction traffic. Yep.
Okay, so essentially next spring, all utilities will be to the site.
Correct.
Okay, so what's the timing on this building then?
Yep. So right now we are intending to start construction as soon as we kind of go through the City of DeSoto approval process, which at this time, obviously we're here tonight with the Planning Commission for the site plan, final plat approval process. We have previously submitted for building permit and met with the City of DeSoto earlier today to kind of meet and reconvene on that permit review process. We anticipate that permit approval at some point by the end of this month, if not early August. We would immediately start building shell construction, so footing foundations, et cetera, associated with this building immediately in sometime, let's say mid-August this year. We are currently targeting next summer for substantial completion of that 1 million square foot building.
So, obviously, with this many buildings going in, there's gonna be a pretty substantial, water demand, especially, I assume most of these buildings are gonna be fire pump service for the.
Correct, yep.
Okay, and all of that's been included in the main,
Yep, it has.
from a
Yes, so-
demand perspective?
Yep,
Okay.
correct. And we actually have a, full design build, fire protection package completed already with the building C development, so.
Cool.
So I guess random question, why did you guys start with building C?
Yeah, so there's and we can't announce it just yet, but there's, say, a high-profile tenant that we're working to actively finalize a lease agreement with in the coming weeks. This particular part of the project site, they were most keen on, so we put it at this location on the project site. Coincidentally, it was actually the last area on site that we were grading, so it worked out relatively well from a sequencing perspective. But this 1 million square foot building will eventually house half of it will house a high profile tenant.
So is gravity sewer gonna occur from the building to the sanitary sewer line?
Yeah, correct. Yep. So basically, if you're looking at this plan, Mike, could you put your cursor kind of the northeast corner?
Northeast.
Yeah, right, yep, exactly. There's a sanitary sewer manhole that's right there where Mike's cursor is. If you track back to the northeast corner of the building, there's a sewer, lateral that will tie into that manhole location, so.
And then, have you guys looked at future development? I mean, is there any other utilities that need to be installed, buildings to the west or anything that would tie into that Edgerton line, or is that?
There would be, at some point later down the road, on the west side, there'll be a force main that would be
Okay.
needed to tie into that sewer.
Yeah,
And-
we're not be able to serve the far west corner by this
Yeah.
sewer.
Okay, so
There's
there'll be
always
a
been
lift station
planned a
pumping
little pump
into this.
station there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and that might be a private pump station.
Yeah, it'll be a private pump station, and we have not installed that at this time because that west side of the site is some TBD on kind of what we do there. So we didn't want to go install something and guess wrong.
Are you with Flint? I'm sorry. I didn't.
I am, yeah, yeah, Eric Gramacki with Flint Development.
Okay, thanks,
Yep.
Eric.
So, just to kind of summarize, Edgerton's gonna be open as soon as Clarkson gets 103rd completed west of the roundabout and the roundabout completed.
It will primarily be, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they're completing that Edgerton Road to the east up to the Panasonic entrance, starting now up until the fall. Once that work is completed, then they will open up the Edgerton Road section to allow for traffic. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Yeah, so their management of traffic to get the Panasonic site built, the critical link, there's a critical link, those two roundabouts.
Yeah.
The one at Astor Parkway and the one at Edgerton, because, and this is still kind of up in the air, they may need to go with one-way traffic along Lexington Avenue west along 103rd and then to Edgerton and go north. They're still, don't know about that yet, but
I understand there's a lot of pieces coming together here all
Yeah.
at once, but I just, I was curious how your schedule fit in with that road, and it sounds like it fits pretty good.
yeah.
It fits in well, yep.
You're also worried about getting the Sunflower Ballparks.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
well,
so that's the reason.
you know.
The sunflower ball fields are the reason they're not doing the west end first, because we told them we needed those ball fields until the end of August.
Yeah.
And so that's why it kind of started in the middle, and then they'll switch over to the west.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that last section at 95th Street in Edgerton comes after all the sewer and all that's complete in the spring of next year, correct? Because it's supposed to finish all the way to the tie-in at K-10.
Yeah,
correct?
right, it's supposed to go all the way to the ramp, essentially. There'll be a taper there, but yeah.
So none of that will start until the completion of the sewer line through all that
That's
and
right.
the water relocation.
That's right.
Yeah, correct, yep.
It'll be that way for another 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
So is Water 7 able to supply all the water for your development?
Yeah, so they have confirmed we've got a will serve letter from them for all domestic irrigation service, and then we will have to make some, we kind of mentioned the fire pump earlier, some
Yeah.
additional provisions from a fire protection perspective for the building, so.
Okay.
Okay.
What's your strategy to get to the building while all this road construction is blocking all of your access?
So we've been actively working, and we meet, regularly with the city of DeSoto every couple weeks, and then with BHC Clarkson, and that whole team to discuss access about once a month. So we currently have a plan in place to, utilize Edgerton Road as, kind of the local traffic to get construction in. And long-term, like Mike said, is somewhat to be determined on whether or not they're gonna end up shifting to maybe a one-way traffic plan or not. But what we do know is, and we've got actually a pretty, high-level conceptual layout of what the sequencing might look like, because we obviously greatly care about it. If it ends up, eventually ending up being Lexington Avenue, being our main point of access, and then looping out to the north, at some point that will likely be the case as 103rd Street's fully shut down. So basically what we've been doing is we've got like 4 sheets of an aerial view of our project site, and of those 4 sheets, it's each section of time on where we're getting access from to the project as we currently understand it.
Right.
So
We're doing the same thing with our
Picked
water.
up the hardest spot you could to access. to
Yeah.
all of this
Well, actually, the hardest spot's probably our water treatment plant. So,
that's our contractor's problem anyway, so
Yeah, right.
they'll figure it out.
Can you show me, I don't know if you have it in that set, but a plan view of that would be the residences on the east side of Edgerton Road, which houses are staying in, I know you guys did some other plan of rezoning for multifamily
Yep.
on the east side. Can you kind of show me that, or maybe just pull something up on Ames? or-
Okay.
Yeah, and I will preface it that I'm not directly involved with that property, that project. I'm aware that obviously we're working to
Yep.
potentially close on that, some property there on the east side yet, but I would not intimately involved in that.
So here's the Flint Commerce Center's here. This tract here, currently owned by Shancy. And this tract are part of that. That's the almost 30 acres that was rezoned. That's the Flint, that's the residential piece. This tract here currently has a single family home on it. We think it's gonna be there, it'll remain. This tract is currently for sale. We've also, there's several tracts to the north here. This one and this one have changed hands recently, within the last couple of years. So BD Properties owns that. They're not in the city. They haven't requested an annexation. They haven't requested any. We've met with a couple of developers on them to discuss a project, but nothing further. This is private owner, that's private owner, and that's private owner. So.
Have you guys met with those neighbors?
Actually, organically through the Edgerton Road construction process, we've met with them a few different times from a coordination aspect perspective. From a property acquisition perspective, I can't really speak to that in detail.
I mean, I'm just talking on your guys' stuff, on the actual development of the building. Did you guys meet with those owners? Not to acquire the property, but just meet with them?
Like from presenting the project perspective, I believe during some of the preliminary plat approval process, some of the owners in those locations were made aware of the project. And we had some conversations with them specifically regarding like kind of City of DeSoto landscape buffering requirements that we're going to meet and all that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So punchline, full cross dock facility, half of it's, you've got a tenant that you're kind of chasing after, maybe
Yeah.
have a good feel for him or line on him, throw the demising wall somewhere down the middle. I mean, anything unusual about this? It looks like it's pretty standard Class A building.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, just typical Class A building shell construction. As we're still working through that potential tenant opportunity, kind of what that tenant improvement package will consist of. But at this time, it's just building shell construction for typical Class A warehouse.
I assume you're pulling enough power in there to get a couple thousand amps per tenant.
Yep. Yeah. So right now we've got two separate 4,000 amp services. Evergy is on time for upgrades to the distribution line along Edgerton Road.
Yep.
Long-term, first phase is 15 megawatts of additional power, which will be completed later this year. There's a second phase that'll be completed by the end of 2025 that gives us an additional 15 megawatts. So that's for the full build-out of the entire park.
Cool.
Anybody else? I have a question, I suppose maybe it's more for staff, but I know you had the finding that an architectural standards complies with our architectural standards, and I was just looking those up again, because I was kind of surprised by the profile pictures of this, and this is a very, very long front. I don't even know how many feet that is. The front's Edgerton Road, I mean, this is what I was looking at in particular.
Top of the exterior elevation drawn, particularly.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull, it's
Yeah,
still kind of
This is
loading.
the one.
Yep. Exterior elevation.
And I know that in the past, we have been pretty critical of those that don't appear to be much variation in terms of building height as it goes along and the scale as being what it is. It's just a pretty flat rectangle. And I just was curious because our standards are rather amorphous. I mean, I'm looking at them and we don't have a whole lot of detail on it, but in particular, it's Article 11, Section 7. and it's I, J, and K. It applies to an M1 zone. It states, architectural design should create visual interest through use of different textures, complementary colors, shadow lines, contrasting shapes. Use of walls of a single color with little detailing or completely blank is strongly discouraged. I know the photographs or the renderings we had included some stripes and lines and things, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And is that what we're looking at in terms of in terms of visual interest, it's adequate? Is that?
Yeah, Roger, I would say that those elevations in some ways don't do it justice. I mean,
I hope
one of the things that's subtle is, when I mentioned the building facades, I mean, they do set back and they'll create some interest with shadows and things like that that really don't show up in just a sort of a flat elevation. Because if you look at that, it appears like everything is the same.
Yeah.
And I believe we have an
Plain
exterior elevation that's colored potentially.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that.
Yeah,
Here's some renderings.
Yeah.
So, with these large spec buildings that you see, a lot of times I see you generally build them out to be demised upwards of 8 or so tenants if you wanted to
Yeah.
in a building that size. Generally, that means that you have some sort of entry point in each one of these. That sometimes those are brought out. Is that something that you've got here, or is this spec to where you've just got the 4 corners that are meant to have office space in them?
Yeah, in a building this size, like, and traditionally, like these larger cross sections, we'll just have those 4 corners that are really hit. A lot of times tenants, and there's still opportunity and flexibility to further subdivide, but a lot of times tenants have concerns or issues if they were to go along like kind of that lower 95 footing location, which is kind of like the below dock wall as you're looking this lower 2 elevations. It creates challenges to get in and out of the facility. So traditionally, we'll have our offices at the 4 corners, and that typically serves a lot of potential types of tenants. And then, yeah, really to kind of address some of your comments regarding the exterior elevation. So we have multiple different types of colors along the exterior. We'll also have reveals cut in throughout to kind of give some different appearances as you work through that.
Well, that's on the
exterior.
south elevation, but your dock sides.
Yep.
I mean, and that's the one that's going to run down a quarter of Edgerton Road, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, correct.
So when you're driving in, that's what you're going to be looking at is the east elevation, right?
Yep. And that will also have revealed cut-ins, multiple different colors of paint
Really?
tied in. Yep, absolutely. So it's difficult to discern from the exterior, but if you zoom in a little bit on those dock walls, it's got the same kind of general schematic where you'll have those reveals cut in. You can kind of see some of them there, but those reveals will be cut in to help transition from the paint perspective. They also give it kind of a different appeal and presentation from the exterior. Yeah, that's a great one, Mike. So you see there's kind of some of those different lines going vertically, which are the panel joints, along with horizontally, which are the reveals. And then those reveals are at each color transition to, again, kind of create that, that different appeal from a color transition perspective. And then I think another little key aspect is see all of our man doors along the dock wall will have multiple reveals along with a different color schematic to break up that elevation as you work along those east and west ends.
Well, I mean, I think it's important because you are having rezoned the property right across the street as being residential. We do have a need to try to be somewhat visually responsible, and I totally rely on staff on that to whether or not this comports or not. But the whole section I is on the loading docks, and the way this is set out there, you got basically what, quarter mile of loading docks?
Yeah, it's. I think the exact linear footage is just under 2,000 feet, but from a Class A industrial warehouse perspective, I think when we go up against other industrial developers across the market, we feel very confident our product, not with just the the kind of exterior elevation we're looking along the dock wall, but at the corners as well, is superior from not just a paint schematic perspective, but also from exterior glazing, et cetera, and some of the other components that we've been able to incorporate. So, and then it's difficult, again, maybe, Mike, could you go to that project rendering corner exhibit, please?
Which one?
I think it'd be the corner rendering, might be a little bit lower down the presentation.
Towards the end, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You talking about the colorized one?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, that right there. So what we do here, and Yeah, and just to kind of help the planning commission a little bit more at the corners. So at these corners, we will do something called like return panels to break up. You're kind of talking about the corner of where the office space locations go. We'll have those return panels that allow for some of that break at the corner locations, along with, a different, kind of an ephes finish around the corner band there that typically has a different finish on the undersurface as well, so.
We do have a requirement that with regard to loading docks in the M1, that they have a setback of 250 feet from the road. Is that, would we comply with that?
Yeah, it's on the drawings and stuff, as I recall, it's 281 feet, I believe.
Okay.
From Edgerton Road.
And then we also mentioned additional plantings and those sorts of things to help shield that. And you feel like that's all covered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did request additional plantings on Edgerton Road. Buffer the residential aspect on the east side of this development.
Well, if there ever was a quote-unquote overly long historical facade, this is it. And that's what we talk about specifically in O. And I'm just kind of curious as to whether or not that's something that we as a planning commission feel comfortable with what's proposed, or whether we look at that a little closer. I don't know.
Roger, to kind of give color to what the little bit of sidebar that we had here, that I pulled up a picture of a warehouse in Lenexa that, and they have very similar sort of requirements. And one of the things that did jump out at me, and since you pointed it out, I kind of picked up on it. There is some visual elements that change to kind of break it up a bit, and some extra glass in there to make it looks not so sort of industrial. So, I mean, based on how you read the code, I would tend to agree that maybe there needs to be something put in there.
I'm not going to tell you how to build a building. That's not our job. And
Yeah.
the question is this going to be, as constructed, something that we as a community are going to be, gosh, I wish they'd have done something different. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really kind of the test in my mind.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand. We empathize with that, and really from our perspective, we felt like this kind of product and this typical package has worked well in different communities. We've got a project right now in Marana, Arizona, that's right off of multiple residential developments, build-to-rent communities, right along the I-10 frontage corridor. I mean, you can spot it from the highway. And there's been multiple major presentations about the project and how the kind of pride that town has with the development, and same kind of articulation, same kind of exterior glazing package, and the town's kind of embraced that project and been very happy with how it's all shaken out. Again, don't want to speak for the city of DeSoto and planning commission, et cetera, but we feel confident in what we've proposed here, and it's very consistent with what we've delivered across the country, which again we feel like is above what some other competition will typically deliver. So.
Said my piece. Anybody want to talk?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. If there are no further questions, then thank you, and then this matters then before the planning commission for discussion.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a big issue everywhere, these truck docks. A lot of people try and keep them from being facing the roads. But I think there's probably, on a development like this, that might be impossible. But I think we could consider maybe, berming and landscaping. At least from the driver's perspective, that could probably help kind of take the effect of all those trucks sitting there.
I think we did address that when we were initially planned this. We had requested additional berming and landscaping to hide it as much as possible, and also the additional setback. Am I thinking of the right one, guys?
We talked about that, but I think on this side, with this site plan, building C, it's gonna be hard to do berming. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but this building is set lower than Edgerton Road. on the south side, because they have to cut the corner
Yeah, they got a lot of grade in there.
to even out the site. So, I mean, relatively, the finished floor is about 10 foot lower at the midpoint where it comes into the site than Edgerton. I mean, Edgerton Road is falling off towards the north, but in the middle, it's 10 foot lower. That sounds, so I just want to point that out
Yeah.
too. And then I did look at that house on the east side. It is about the elevation of the finished floor of the building. So, I mean, the building is still sticking up, but it's lower.
Well, I wouldn't hope to do anything about the building, you know, it's just, it's an impossible thing to screen that, really. But,
How many cars a day we think are gonna go down Edgerton Road? What's that thing's designed to carry quite a few, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Roger, I probably couldn't give you a number.
I mean, it's been improved because we expect a lot more traffic.
Thousands, yes, yes.
And so if this is the first building on this, and we have at least 2 more buildings that are gonna be on Edgerton Road, and if we're setting the standard here, it's potential we're gonna have that all the way up. I don't know, I mean, it troubles me to have that long of an unbroken plane that just fronts the front door of that part of that community. Now, most of the people that are driving there are people that are gonna be going to the plant and industrial, and they shouldn't be surprised. But you do have a bunch of folks that wanna build apartments over there too, including this very applicant. So, you know, you gotta kind of give some thought to the aesthetics of it. I just was surprised to see those elevations that, and granted, there may be better pictures, but the ones we got were kind of like, well, that's a really long wall.
Like Linda, I think we had addressed this somewhat on the initial presentation, and if I remember right, I may not, but I thought they were gonna do some additional berming, and because you're basically gonna have a wall with nothing but dock doors facing that. There's no amount of lipstick you can put on that to make it look good. I worked around that for 30 years.
If I might chime in here, I think that's exactly right. We did address it. Kevin Lee with Polson Law Firm, legal counsel to the applicant developers. So we went through, as you'll recall, the text amendment process to accommodate this exact type of development and building. And so I think that this commission and council has already expressed its intent that the city head in this direction for this area and to see it build out. I think that Eric's point can't be emphasized enough that Flint really prides itself, and it's a marketing advantage, that these are truly best in class in terms of Class A industrial. And you are just, when we're talking about that size and mass of this building, we truly have done the best that we feel is viable to do on this building. And we think that you will be very pleased with the product. Certainly that's your guys' decision, and completely get that you're looking long-term down the road for what the community wants to see here from a code interpretation standpoint and legal perspective. I think there's no question that this meets it. If, you know, we could dissect each of those provisions, but it gets into you do this, or this, right? And I think that we've done those multiple factors that we've incorporated here to help mitigate the views and avoiding long monotonous facades. So I think it's clearly meeting code, and then it's up to you all, of course, to decide if this is the product that you want to see here. But I think what I would say is that in terms of Class A industrial, this is the top of the class, and really what you are going to be pleased with at the end of the day.
If I remember correctly, when we went over this before, you had brought a lot of illustrations of different samples of what these buildings were gonna look like, and that's when we put in a lot of thought as to what extra things we were gonna try to do to break it up. Just work with some of the homeowners during that process. We want to make it as pleasing to the eye as possible.
I recall that as well, and I think, unfortunately, the elevations just don't do it justice. Like Brad mentioned, I think the rendering is a much more instructive representation of what those buildings will ultimately represent at the end of the day. We do have the offsets. The code really, we focused on the building corners and adding glass and those additional elements to help
We're just not used
mitigate.
to building them quite that long.
Fair,
That's why
right?
it was like, wow, that's really a long way.
Yeah, it is. They're large buildings, no question, right? The other thing I would say, again, this is, query whether it's in your purview tonight to consider, but I do think it's important to note that Eric alluded to it. We are very far along with discussions with a very high-profile tenant that I think is going to be a huge impact for the city and the region as a whole. Timing is critically important for that, and so if this were to be tabled tonight and come back, that is a massive blow to that.
Well, we're here on my birthday because of it. So
Fair
I
enough.
understand it. I think we all get it.
And we appreciate that.
That said, we have to talk about it.
Sure.
So that's the point. I
Absolutely.
think your point is probably goes with what we got from Brad, which is that this complies with city code. So if that's the case, so be it. I guess maybe this is just worth talking about in general as well too, that our city code, you and I may very well differ as to whether or not this would actually comply with city code in terms of the variation that is rather amorphously described in our code. And that's a problem. And it's a problem when it comes to a building that's 2,000 feet long, because that's something I don't think we ever thought about.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, well taken. I don't disagree with anything you said, other than that we likely do disagree on whether or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's any way to read the code that this doesn't meet it, because I think that flexibility was intentionally built in for you guys to consider case by case as
Well,
they
that
come.
statement right there makes me want to go back and look at it again. Because if you think that's so vague that you can do whatever you want to with it,
No,
that's the problem.
was not what I intended to mean with that statement, but I think that it was the revisions that were incorporated in the code were intended to accommodate a new brand of building, right? A new set of
That language
parameters
I
that
quoted
we're
there, I
operating.
think, has been in the code for a very long time. Because I remember that from 20 years.
I think it has been. There was only slight adjustments, right? But I think we added the piece that references building corners, and it was an or, because cognizant of the fact that when you have a building that's this size and scope, it's just not feasible to incorporate glass along the entire facade, for
And
example.
it wasn't the glass I was talking about, it was the variation, the length of the facade and the frontage.
Yeah.
So, I think we do need to talk about that again, maybe as a planning commission item. For what we're talking about tonight, code is what the code is. We got a recommendation from staff that it complies with the code. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of point in beating you up on that, but I do think it's an interesting problem we're gonna have, that if we have 2,000-foot long buildings, maybe we ought to be thinking about this. And maybe this is gonna be fantastic and nobody's gonna care. No, but I'll take your representation that they do quality work and people like them and
Yes.
that you had good experiences, and so, that's great, appreciate it, I certainly hope that's right.
Sure.
From a planning commission perspective, you'd kinda like to have a little better handle on that.
Totally get it. I think that's right. And what I'd say is, will it be to the level of a storefront retail along the entire facade? No, right? That's not the nature of the building we're doing, but I do feel extremely confident in saying that you all, for this asset class, are going to be extremely pleased with the end result at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I guess I agree with the broken facade, and it'd be nice to have some glass. And I think beyond that, if we're going to have a discussion about standards for these buildings, I think screening truck docks would be an important element to that too.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree with you. When you have working in these buildings for the last 20 years, when you have a cross dock building, two sides are going to have docks, right? So it's depending upon what the plot and the land kind of lends as to if the dock doors are going to go north, south, or east, west, right? So it would be very hard. I do think the berming and the vegetation requirements are going to help, but depending upon what this tenant is, they might have every dock door filled every day, or they might have 5 dock doors. It really depends on the commodity and what they're doing. It's hard to plan around that in terms of aesthetics.
I mean, also you gotta remember the fact that, they do have a development right across the street that they're gonna hopefully build apartments on. So, I mean, essentially, that's gonna take up half of that 2,000 feet roughly. So their tenants are gonna be looking at their building, so,
They're gonna try to make it as nice as they can.
that would be my thinking on the north 1,000 feet of it. So, gotta weigh that too.
Make it as good looking as a 48-foot tall building can be.
Right.
I think they've done what they can and as far as meeting what the current requirements are.
Any other discussion? And this is for the commission for approval of the site plan.
That's correct.
So is there a motion on that?
Well, I think I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan as it's designed in item number
7A.
7A. Thank you, 7A.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, are we including the conditions that are included in the staff report as well?
Well, I suppose we should ask our commissioner who made the motion.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I put that staff request in there that any public improvements be approved by our city engineer. This side's nearly all private developed, so it's more of a catch category. There are going to be some approaches along Edgerton Road that will need a city engineer to approve. So you'll probably be seeing that note pretty standard on just about everything that's going to be coming through.
So I amend your motion?
Make a motion to approve agenda item 7A, inclusive of the staff's provisions.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Manson,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Kemplin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Moving on to item 7B, which is to consider a final plat for Flint Commerce Park Building C.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moving on to our last item on the agenda, before the building permits can be issued, the final plat must be brought before the planning commission for approval and then to the city council to accept easements and rights of way. This is this step is the final step before the building permits can be issued. Everything on this conforms with our city code. There's a pretty good explanation of a lot of the items within the application itself as far as what's happening on the final plat. One thing also to ask the applicant about was some of the odd shapes that are part of the final plat. That was for temporary construction easements, along with some of the right-of-way improvements that were sort of in flux with the design of 103rd Street and Edgerton Road. So you do have some interesting shapes. However, ultimately, those shapes will be conveyed to a management association for all those common areas of development. So if you do look at particularly track C2 and C3, they are rather zigzagged and long and narrow tracks, which are really uncommon on a final plat, but that's how things sort of worked out. The applicant has some more detailed explanation on that if you'd like to ask them about that. But it does conform to our requirements for a final plat. Also, it is in conjunction or conformity with the preliminary plat that was approved about a year ago. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions?
So I guess, is there any language on that track C3 on the plat that needs to be added, or?
No, I don't think so. It's just one of those things that just seemed a little different from what we'd normally see. As far as you can see, it's actually on the south side of the plat, right there. You can see that track C2 3, and then also C2 is actually just that long kind of skinny finger on the south side. So it's just something that I was curious about and wanted to make sure that you knew the reasons for that before you approved it. There isn't anything other than, like I said, some interesting discussions and processes for temporary construction easement along 103rd Street.
Okay, so I guess it's kind of, I don't know, I guess it's housekeeping, I guess, is the plat gonna be recorded while the improvements are being done? Because then, I guess Flint will still own that property.
Well, I guess, no, I mean, this will go to the council for easements and right-of-way, but they'll be dedicated by separate instrument, as I understand.
The easement's the right of way, but not the separate C2 tract or C3 tract. Those will still be with Flint.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I just didn't know if they're gonna do improvements in tract C3, then that ground will be owned by Flint. I don't know if there's a temporary easement that still needs to be put to do the improvements.
Yeah, so the right-of-way that they're showing will be the permanent right-of-way that KDOT
Okay.
needs, that we need. That's just standard practice. The tracks are the other. There's currently some temporary construction easements over those tracks that will eventually expire and go
Okay.
away. At which time, and Flint will own the underlying property the whole time, and presumably after the fact as well.
I got you, so there is temporary easements out there today.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I mean,
And
other
Brad
than-
called it an interesting process. I would call it more agonizing, interesting with, KDOT designing the thing.
Yeah.
At the same time, Flint's planning,
Yeah.
it's been quite a coordination effort.
I mean, other than the odd shapes, having set-aside tracks that may eventually be dedicated to or deeded to some sort of an association is pretty common. You know,
Yes, that is
kind of little
that is
weird
true.
Shapes to them, but other than that, I don't think and we have that a lot of times where they'll file the final plat that has those identified but doesn't actually convey them to the association. The developer continues to own them until such time that they
Yeah.
do them later. So I think that's okay. Any other questions?
I guess those tracks will have to have some kind of cross access. Aren't those over the drives?
Yeah, the track essentially are the private drives that will connect future parking lots and connect this around the building. Yeah, so I would imagine any tenant that comes into lot 1 here would want that as a guarantee that they could,
Is
the
that
agreement.
language not in the plat?
No.
You don't typically put that language on the plat.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, Brad. So matters then before the planning commission, any discussion? Seeing none, I assume we're looking for a motion to recommend approval or denial to the city council.
Make a motion, we recommend approval of the final plat for the Flint Commerce Center Building C.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes,
Templin,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Manson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That concludes our agenda for tonight. Anything anybody else wanted to talk about?
I have an announcement. Tomorrow evening, there's going to be a public information meeting on all things going on in the city of DeSoto. So it'll be from 6 to 8. It's come and go as you please. Representatives from most of the organizations involved with making things happen, KDOT, the design builder on the site, public infrastructure stuff will be there, KDHE. So if you have questions or if your neighbors have questions, tell them. Tomorrow evening and down in the in the gym down here.
Could I recommend them updating the signs for City of DeSoto on K-10?
Yeah, no, it's in the works. We're working on it.
Oh,
Yep.
really?
Mm-hmm. They're gonna put a space in
You want
there.
more exits?
Well, that too, yes, but yes.
Well, yeah, so DeSoto
They'll have
even now,
space.
we have 4 exits. Yeah, they're gonna update those signs.
great. Thank you, Mike.
Sign only says two.
The what?
The sign only says two exits.
Right, no, it'll be 4. Yeah,
Right.
they'll update that as well.
Oh, I got you.
We doubled the size of town, we got double the density.
Right, sure. Okay.
Entrances, entrances, yes.
Yes.
Any other discussion items or motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Same sign. Very good.
Go enjoy the rest of your.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Thank you all. Happy
you.
birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate everybody accommodating.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Yep. See you. How about you?